of Radio One. And today we're talking about the 2020 census and why it matters to you, to me, and all of Columbus. I'm with the Columbus Mayor, Andrew Ginther, and Franklin County Commissioner Kevin Boyce, two good friends of mine. First of all, good afternoon, gentlemen. How you guys doing?
Doing great. Good to be with you.
Good, Jarvis. Yes, it's totally good to be with you too, Mayor.
Well, I'm excited about this conversation. I want to kind of jump right into it. First of all, Mayor, tell us about Columbus Counts and the partnership between the city and the county to help build awareness about the 2020 census and why it's so important for Central Ohio to be counted.
Well, absolutely. A big issue, and one that Commissioner Boyce and I knew from Jump Street we needed to be working together on. There was just so much at stake, and it's become even more important based on what's happening with COVID right now. You know, the census can shape many different aspects of our community: health clinics, fire departments, schools, even roads and highways. So the numbers impact funding for key programs such as Medicaid, housing support, early childhood education, parks, hospitals, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, which is a real lifeline for many of our families who face insecurity with food. So many other important programs that support families, women, children, infants right here in Columbus and our neighborhoods. And as I mentioned, with the situation with COVID-19, we're going to need more funding for programs and services to help those who have lost their jobs, lost income, lost health coverage. So today, taking the census is more important than ever before.
Yeah, so, Commissioner Boyce, why does this matter so much for the county in terms of the collaboration with the city, and most important, getting our hard to reach families to understand the importance of taking the census?
Well, I'll be as general as I can. At first, I want to thank and recognize the city of Columbus are great partners to work with, but if you thought of the county to the city, you should think of a sibling-like relationship where at the end of the day, we're part of the broader family that is Central Ohio. And what we do matters to the people who live in Columbus, and what Columbus does matters to the people around Franklin County. And so working together is the only way to do it in a way where everybody can benefit and be impacted. Mayor Ginther, I think, covered a lot of things, and many of those things work through the county: SNAP and TANF and Medicaid, Medicare. All those things are things we do to help support those who are most vulnerable in our community. But I want you to think of a broader way about the census today. We're fighting and competing against states like North Carolina and Georgia in terms of our congressional representation. And the mayor mentioned the COVID-19 environment. Congressional representation in this kind of environment is most critical, because the amount of people you have, the amount of minds that you have in Washington to help them understand the plight and the needs of our residents is critical based on the number that we have representing us in Washington. And so counting everybody in Central Ohio, where we have the largest city in Ohio and the 14th largest city in the nation, and we have Ohio's largest county, it will be critical for the entire state of Ohio that we do everything we can to make sure every resident is counted.
A big part of this is really engaging and actually getting the word out to the community. So, talk to me about how you guys are engaging the community to help spread the word. And, I'll start with you, Commissioner Boyce.
Well, the COVID-19 environment has created a very interesting and new dynamic. Take, for example, this Zoom conference that we're on today. Normally, the mayor and I would be traveling around town and hosting events and speaking at festivals and different things, and really doing our best in our schedules to uplift and promote the census. But today we've got to take this approach online because of the COVID-19 environment. But even if we didn't have this extraordinary event happening with the pandemic, we'd still have to be creative in how we approach getting the message out. And so Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, and all of those social media outlets are ways that we are creatively deploying resources to reach every resident every day. And that's really our thinking around this. But we're also engaged with various groups in the community, from nonprofit organizations to the business community, to help link into their resources of outreach and work together to spread the message about the value and the importance, and most importantly, the idea that if we work together, we can make this a better Central Ohio.
So a lot of collaboration, a lot of working together. Mayor Ginther, you got anything on that?
Absolutely. You know, our city and county efforts are in step with one another. As Commissioner Boyce said, we're intentional about our coordination. We don't want to duplicate efforts. And quite honestly, if we're aligned and coordinated and strategic, we can leverage, our resources together, have a greater impact in the community. And that's what our community expects, whether or not you live in the city of Columbus or you live in Franklin County, we are here to serve everyone. And so we've engaged representatives, as Commissioner Boyce mentioned, specifically, as our community has become much more diverse in the last 10 or 20 years. We're probably in the minority as kids that grew up here in Columbus. The majority of people that live here now weren't born here, and they don't know how much Columbus has changed, and Franklin County has changed over the last 20 years. Much more diverse, much more international, and a community that continues to grow and thrive, and that values diversity. But it's important that we recognize that and engage that and go about this census outreach differently than we have in the past. And that's why we got the faith community, New Americans, Latina, LGBTQ, Nepali, African nations, including Somali, our youth, the schools, veterans, homeless, and so many more to reach out to all different constituencies of the community. So we got radio, TV, and print commercials, distribution of the flyers throughout the community. Social media has been a big push, especially during COVID-19, figuring out different ways of reaching folks, communicating. Certainly something we've never done before, like what we're doing now. In early March, we were out in the community distributing information. Now we have to rely on community influencers, probably some folks that are tuning in here today to share that message, because as Commissioner Boyce said, we're somewhat limited in our traditional work door to door on the streets, getting the word out. We got to keep everybody safe, got to keep everybody healthy, but it makes the census more important than ever.
So for those of you guys who are, tuned in, whether you're on Facebook or Instagram or you're on YouTube, make sure you make sure you share this with your family. I mean, it's highly important that everybody get this information. So it doesn't cost you anything to push the button and share it across your platforms. Give us a like, give us a comment, let us know that you guys are listening. Now you can also submit questions too. This is a all of us conversation. And so we'll do our best to get those answered. And as a reminder to those who are tuned in, you can actually take the census right there at home by visiting 2020census.gov. So as this conversation is happening, you again can go to 2020census.gov and actually take the census. It's very easy, man. I took the census, knocked it out quickly, and I mean, I'm so glad I did it. And I know the mayor and Commissioner Boyce, can speak to the same sentiment, because you guys are taking it, right?
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
I did my online. I'm not sure how the mayor did his. I did it online just because I wanted to see what it was like doing it online. And it literally is, 10 questions, and couldn't have taken more than 10 or 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Very easy. And folks have options to do it different ways. We did it online, but there are lots of different ways that can complete it. Based on whether or not you have internet access or a computer or whatever, lots of different ways to participate. We want to make sure folks, whatever the way is, that they make sure that they're counted.
Very true. Now, Mayor, go ahead, Commissioner Boyce. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I want the thing when I have conversations with everyday residents, and I know the mayor has too, about the census and the census and its importance. People worry about things like confidentiality. They worry about perhaps immigration issues and things like that. And it should be said, and I've said this 100 times, that's protected information based on the Constitution. There's no federal agency has the right to your information. It is used strictly for data and financial dissemination. And if you don't believe me, think about in March, where we were really sort of at the crux of the matter with regard to the COVID-19. We're still very new. We're still very unknown. We're headed. And the FEMA and Washington had to sort of figure out quickly where to deploy resources, where to sort of zero in on from safety measures to medicine and vaccines. And a lot of it was based on population. A lot of it was based on density of population. And so you saw early on in this process, Mayor, I'm sure you talked to your colleagues out in LA and in New York, certainly, where they were able to set up testing, and they've been doing drive-through testing for 2 months. We're still, both in Ohio and Central Ohio, working to get it set up and really to get it flowing. But a lot of the reason why that is a lot of it is determined based on population density. You know, the CDC wanted to zero in on density because that's how it spreads the quickest. And so places like LA and New York, you saw them quickly in the mix for those sort of early resource deployments. And I can't think of anything where that we do in making decisions, and I'm 100% certain that the city of Columbus is this way too, where we don't draw on data to try to evaluate our best approach to problem solving. You know, some of it may be roadway construction. Some of it may be housing developments. Some of it might be school and educational resources and needs, or health and medicine resources and needs. And so all of those decisions that we make are data driven. And I know the mayor's done incredible work in the Linden area, and I hope he'll talk about that. But I'm certain that a lot of it was based on data and information, and they didn't just pick Linden to zero in resources on. It was based on information, and most of that, the vast majority of information we use, comes from the census.
Those are amazing points. And I love how you've been able to kind of tie different communities together, different thought leaders together. Mayor, you spoke to it a little bit about the community influencers that you guys have been using to spread the word. Let's talk a little bit about that. Let's tell people how important it is for them to be able to talk to their family members and be able to call and text and tweet people and say, hey, make sure you're taking your census. Let's reiterate how important that is again.
Absolutely. And it's really important that community influencers, use their voice, their platforms, their networks to share this information. There's only so much county commissioners and mayors can do. We may have a platform, a forum to use, but we know it's within our circles of influence, people we work with, we worship with, that we, celebrate with, that we are friends with, that influence what we do in our behaviors and choices. Because this, there are many different demands on our time. We're being pulled in lots of different directions. Many of us have become homeschool educators here in the last couple of months, on top of our jobs and everything else. But it drives home how critically important. Think about this for a second. So we receive funding for 55 different programs in Central Ohio, based on 55 different programs. So no matter what stage in life, walk in life you are, this census and participating in it, impacts what we get from Medicaid. We receive as a state $16 billion from Medicaid, so healthcare, block grants for prevention and treatment of substance abuse. The state receives $65 million. So our neighbors, our brothers and sisters that are struggling with addiction, struggling with mental health issues, the census can help us get them the services they need. And I mentioned SNAP earlier, more now than ever, especially with so many of our kids that rely on breakfast and lunch during the school year through the school breakfast and school lunch program, that SNAP becomes even more critical for families that are facing, food insecurity, economic insecurity, housing insecurity. Section 8 child choice vouchers, $562 million for housing, and then temporary assistance for needy families, the TANF dollars. The point is this: we receive critical dollars directly tied to taking the census. And that's why we're counting on Columbus, Franklin County, Central Ohio to take the census. This is about getting what our community needs, and B, what our community deserves. We send a lot of tax dollars as a community to Washington, and we deserve those investments back into the people of Central Ohio.
So for those who may be listening, that's well said, Mayor, but for those who may be listening What is the deadline? What is the deadline on getting our Census 2020 in?
So there's some key dates I want to share with folks. People have already received information about the census in their mailboxes. I think we all referenced it. And we all took, I think, all took the census online. They can also call a number and they can take the census in 13 different languages. So if English is not the language, your original language, your native language, or 13 different languages, you can take it in. So you can go online or call in to take the census. You can go to 2020census.gov or call 844-330-2020, 844-330-2020. It's easy. As we mentioned, it takes less than 10 minutes. In for the survey beginning in June, the census will have census workers in the field knocking on doors to encourage families to take and respond to the census. Based on COVID-19, that's been delayed, but that will start in June. They'll have proper ID. I mean, back to the very crux of the matter that Commissioner Boyce talked about. This is safe. Your privacy will be protected, and there's nobody coming to your door that doesn't have proper identification and identifying themselves. We want to do everything we can to encourage families to take and respond to the census. And the drop dead date for all participation is August 14th. So we're going to continue talking about it, raising this, and making sure folks know they can participate in all these different languages. They can do it online, do it over the phone, and then we'll have folks going door to door starting in June.
If I could just add, Yavis and Mayor Ginther, every day we come to work as elected officials, and really not a day goes by where I don't get a constituent call who needs help and needs resources. Sometimes it's preventing them from being evicted from their homes. Sometimes it's trying to address an issue at school or in their neighborhood. But here's the thing about it. 100% of the time, I can't think of any scenario where the resources that receive from the federal government don't somehow play in the way we address the challenges that our most vulnerable often need. And so the mayor alluded to it earlier with SNAP and Medicaid and some of these other resources that, quite frankly, are for families who are really in need. And no matter what the circumstance, it is just a fact that folks need those resources. And so if we didn't have those resources, or we didn't have enough of those resources, it makes the difference between what we're able to do. The other day, Mayor, we were on a call. You weren't on the call, but at the county, we were on a call talking about summer youth employment, and we were talking about daycare, childcare centers, and whatnot. And again, connected to all of those in many ways are federal funds that help people send their kids to daycare, which allow them to work in turn. And so I really want to just express to everyone the critical nature of ensuring that we're counted as much as we can. And you think about it, Franklin County grew to be, just in the last year or so, became the largest county in Ohio, surpassing Cuyahoga County. And when you think back what to Franklin County and in Columbus particularly looked like 10 years ago, because that's the other key, Mayor, as you know. Yeah. We only get one shot at it every decade. And so whatever is produced when we're finished with this process, we have to live within those numbers for the decade. Now, they project our growth rate, and so we're able to use that as sort of an estimated, but it's then reconciled also in 10 years. And so it's critical that we take this time to make sure that it's not about the formula, it's about what goes into the formula. And that's the count of each person, each resident every day. And again, it's so key that we say we're counting residents. We're counting residents, people who live or reside in Central Ohio. And that's what I really just want to express to people, that you make the difference. And whether you believe in public service or not, this is akin to voting. This is akin to paying your taxes. This is a part of the democracy way of life for Americans. And in order for us to do our jobs, we need you to help us to ensuring that every person who resides in Central Ohio is counted.
You make such a great point, Commissioner. I mean, what's so different about Columbus and Franklin County than maybe other cities and counties around the state of the country is that we're growing. We have been growing. I mean, there were 250,000 people in Columbus in 1950. They're 900,000 now. They're 1.2 million. Is that right? In Franklin County?
1.4 million.
1.4 million people in Franklin County. And so, and we all know from all the Morksey studies and Inside 2050, we're going to grow by a third. So we're going to have over 3 million people in the region by 2050. And we know that our city and our county is going to continue to grow as well. So in order to have not just programs and services, but money for transportation, money for infrastructure, all of those things are driven by the census. And so you're absolutely right, Commissioner. We need to participate not just for what we need today, but as we continue to grow into the future, our participation in the census is, I think, more important now than ever.
Yeah, and you know, you said something earlier, Mayor, and I know Yavis knows this too, even though he's a lot younger than you, just a little bit younger than me. I know he knows this too, but you hit the nail on the head, Mayor. We remember what Columbus was like 25 and 30 years ago. Heck, I can remember what Columbus was like 10 years ago, and the difference is dramatic. The difference is in our growth. The difference is in the diversity of people we have here. And that brings a diversity of ideas and entertainment and so forth and so on. And so in order for us to maintain what most people would agree is a very good quality of life in Central Ohio, it's important that we invest in that constantly. The other part I just want to mention just really briefly is that, you know, Central Ohio has been growing and has been thriving and doing well. And even in the COVID-19 environment, while we've struggled, like every place has struggled, we probably haven't had the devastation that some other regions have had because they were so devastated before the pandemic. But even that, every city has the sort of quote unquote tale of two cities. And there are neighborhoods and communities where people are more likely to be in poverty than not. And a lot of it is because this is where they can afford to live. This is the type of housing they can afford to have and whatnot. And so, but that's where this all sort of connects is census dollars allow us to level the playing field. Mayor Ginther has worked really hard in his tenure, in his first and second tenure as mayor, to really drill down into neighborhoods that have been often overlooked for certain types of resources or resources demanded investment in other places. And so Mayor Ginther has tried to really zero in on those historic neighborhoods that have had high rates of poverty for a long time. But census counts and census dollars is what allows us and helps us make the decisions and make, more importantly, the investment to begin to turn back the dial there. Now, these aren't things that happen overnight. These aren't things that, you know, I don't want to present that, hey, the census having all count solves everything. It doesn't. What it does is, Yavis, is it equips us with the information that we need to A, get federal resources to support our work, and B, deploy our own resources in a strategic and tactical way that can make a difference. The city has been working with the county and looking at poverty in Central Ohio. And we're really peeling back the layers and drilling down into why some families are sick, you know, generationally in poverty. And it's important that we have every resource we can as we learn all this information and evaluate this stuff, that we have all the right information so that as the mayor and I get together and deploy resources, we're deploying them in a tactical and a strategic way based on the data and information we have. So I hate to sound like a broken record on this, but I just, to those who are watching or listening, I hope your questions come in. You very much determine the plight in the future of Central Ohio. You very can help Mayor Ginther and I build a pathway of prosperity for everyone. I love the mayor's talk about Central Ohio or Columbus being an opportunity city. But that opportunity is rooted in your own participation and your own investment with Mayor Ginther, with the Franklin County Board of Commissioners and all of our elected officials. And this is where you can most help us. This is where you can most do your part.
So real quick, I mean, kind of tell them how they can spread the word. Because the question that came up on social media was, well, how can we spread the word? So kind of just give them the information where they can go find information to be able to share with others, but how can people spread the word?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of different ways. I mean, obviously the Complete Count Committee has information, everything from social media messages, information that can be distributed within networks that they have available. But I think you're absolutely right. The influencers are so critical, because we all have those circles we travel in, whether it's a sorority, fraternity, where we worship, where we work, where we serve, and within geographic areas throughout the city and the community, whether it's involvement in area commissions and civic organizations, our volunteer organizations that make such a huge impact in our community. But sharing this information, having folks know they've got a variety of ways that they can participate in the census, and almost kind of creating a civic pride that this is part of our duty and our responsibility to our neighbors, is to step up. As I said before, we're sending a lot of money to Washington. This is a chance for us to make sure we get our fair share of that money back into our neighborhoods and our community. But it's incumbent upon each and every one of us. I owe it to you. I owe it to the commissioner. I owe it to my family to participate in this census so that we have the resources here for our kids and their kids to enjoy a better life in a brighter future. But it means us participating in the census today.
And Mary, let me just, and Yavuz, let me give you another example of how this really transfers in real life terms. So most of you have probably heard about the CARES Act. This is the funding that's come from the federal government to respond to the COVID-19 environment and help all of us sort of balance things out in our community. Well, so Central Ohio, there was this rule, and I'm going to paraphrase all this because we're on this format here, but so I hope no one holds me to an exact numbers and exact. I'm sure I'll get emails like you were 0.1 off when you said
we'll
that.
Put a disclaimer under there, right?
Right. I'm going to be very general about this, but much of the funding for CARES Act was based on population. It's a simple formula, the way they created it. And one of the things they said was, if you are early on, if you are a region or a municipality, a city, county, whatever, if you're under 500,000 people, then you can't apply for these funds directly. You would have to work through your state entity for those funds. And that means it's going to delay, take time. There are going to be other layers that you have to go through before that money actually hits your community, hits to your municipality, your county, then to the people. And so it's just time, it's impact, it's resources. Central Ohio, and the way they had it was they took the largest city. If the city was over 500,000 in a county, they subtracted that number out of the county's number. So as the mayor indicated, the city of Columbus is roughly about 900,000 people. So you go 1.4 million people. It's like 1.3 and some change, but it's close to 1.4. I'm rounding that up. Should you subtract the 500,000 or the 900,000 rather that the city of Columbus is out of Franklin County, and it takes us to about roughly, again, don't send me a bunch of emails on this, everybody, but roughly about 470,000 or so residents left, which means Franklin County falls under the mark for direct funding. Now, we advocated, we fought strong for that because the city of Columbus and Franklin County do not deploy the same kind of services. Very different entities. We cover very different things as the city of Columbus does. So yes, we have the same people, often same residents, but there are different services we provide. So subtracting Columbus out of our numbers, doesn't help our region. Nonetheless, that's how the formula works. They subtracted out of our numbers. It took us around to about 475 or so, which meant we didn't get direct funding. Now, in the end, thanks to our delegation members like Joyce Beatty and Sherrod Brown and many others, they were able to fix that provision. But the numbers that were given to Yavuz were still population based, and they still take Columbus out of Franklin County's numbers. So what that means is, in practical terms, and this isn't this isn't exact numbers once again, but it's close. That means Franklin County received about $70 million in CARES Act funds. Columbus probably received, I'm guessing, 170 million, 150 million, Mayor, somewhere around there. I bet 157 million. And so think about that. We don't do the same services. Franklin County is larger because it includes Columbus. So we should have been able to count Columbus in our numbers, and we would have gotten twice as much funds. In the city of Columbus rightfully got what they should have gotten, but we would have gotten somewhere around that. Franklin County got less money than Summit County and Lucas County and Hamilton County, even though we're larger than all of those counties. We got far less than Cuyahoga County.
Wow.
You know, so I think that just speaks to, it's so critical that even if we had just 25,000 more people counting this region, we wouldn't have dealt with that. And it probably would have amounted to another $70 million in CARES Act funds. That's a simple way to think of it that just happened in the last few months.
I mean, that's a great example of why it's so important for us to make sure that we're getting counted and that we're sharing the word. And so if you want to know how you can get engaged and how you can talk to other people about it, one thing you can do right now is you can actually share this live conversation with your followers. Share it on your own page, share it with family members, send it to them, tweet it to them, text it to them. And you can also follow on Twitter at Franklin County, Ohio. So that's Franklin CO, Ohio, as well as at Columbus Gov on Twitter as well. And we're on Facebook as well. So make sure you guys are sharing this information. I mean, one thing you guys did an excellent job in terms of this whole Census 2020 concept was making sure that we had key influencers and those who are in the community, who are doing the work in the community out there as partners. And this is more of a unified front. And it helps a lot more instead of working in silos for us to come together as a unified front and be able to do the work together. And so there are some people who are actually on their social media platforms spreading the word right now. People like the amazing T Street. You got a Reynoldsburg council member, Buwan Payakarel. You also have Hot Chicken Takeover, Shane Lyell, Columbus Urban League Young Professionals, Nick and Habiba Bankston, Reach Strategies, Javier Sanchez, and Zach McCoon from Equitas. So we thank them for their support and for encouraging their followers to take the census. And everybody who's listening today and who's tuning in, please encourage your family members, your friends. We cannot say it and reiterate it enough. Central Ohio is counting on all of us to be counted. I mean, it's just that serious. And so I know we talked about some numbers earlier, which is why I wore this big $sign on my shirt today, because it's so important that we make sure that we count it. But one thing I want to talk about briefly again is I kind of want us to go over some of those numbers again, Mayor Ginther and Commissioner Boyce. I want to talk about the numbers. So give us a sense of how much money Ohio received, because for those who may have just logged on, I want them to realize how serious this conversation is. So let's talk about some of the funding real quick. I know you talked about it earlier, but I need it again.
Do you want me to go, Mayor? You want to go first?
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I'll just say in a nutshell, I believe it's somewhere around $33 billion that comes to the state of Ohio. And if you break that down on a per resident basis, that's about $1,200 per year per resident. So for every person we don't count, that's a loss of $1,200. And I mean, that's serious money. That's real thing when you add it up collectively for the state of Ohio. And then for Central Ohio, that's a fast growing region. So that's, $33 billion. I can think of, let's put it this way. If we didn't have the $33 billion in Ohio, you would see a much different state of Ohio. No matter where you drove, you would definitely feel it on the roadways. You would see it in our state parks. You would see it in many of the places that make Ohio, Ohio. And it wouldn't be as pleasant to be a part of things as it is today.
It really comes down to, I think, Commissioner, you're spot on, 55 programs, $33 billion, but it impacts everything that matters in our lives: housing, food, addiction and mental health services for our families, that temporary assistance when we lose a job, like so many of our neighbors have lost their jobs here recently. I mean, these are services and programs that impact us regardless of who we are. And we all benefit from these programs and services, particularly when decisions are being made about transportation and making decisions that impact infrastructure. They impact all of us, whether or not we may receive temporary assistance for needy families or SNAP. The census impacts each and every one of us and can have an impact on the services we provide for our seniors, a critically important and vulnerable population right now. We know the census impacts that as well. So regardless of where you're at in your life, whether you have kids, what your age is, whether you're working, not working, the census impacts everything that matters to our lives.
So in terms of the numbers now, in terms of where we are now, how are we doing in terms of number of people who have responded so far?
I think we are above the middle of the pack. I think we're at about 65% return rate, but we got to do better than that. That's not going to cut it. If we stay at the 65% rate, I mean, that's really lost. And I got to be honest, Mayor, one of the things that I'm really worried about is I'm worried about losing a congressional member in Congress. I think because it's such a permanent, it's not permanent, but but it can be. It's much harder to gain a seat than to lose a seat, because it's all based on the amount of members of Congress, as everyone knows, is fixed, and it's based on population, how they're broken up. And so if we lose one, that means somebody else is gaining one, and so that's where the fight between North Carolina and Georgia comes in. And so that's the kind of thing that I worry about, that is hard to correct. It's hard to sort of readjust. And I can tell you, for most of our delegation, and I know the mayor has done this, but we got a fairly good delegation where they'll pick up the phone, return your call, and they care about no matter what party, they care about the residents that are here. The problem is that they are a block of votes too on something, and so we need more. And it's just simple math. We need more representation. We need more voices in Washington. We need more, people on certain committees that understand that the county and the city don't carry out the same services. And so you can't subtract one's population from the other and sort of hold it against, and we need, our members can only do so much. God bless the ones that are there, because they're good and they return calls, they respond, and they're active in Congress. But we can't afford to lose another member of our delegation, and certainly not to North Carolina or Georgia, where we're already competing with them for resources.
Yeah. So Commissioner Boyce, what is your challenge to the Buckeye Nation? What is your challenge to Ohio? Because from what I hear, the state up north, they're at a 66.7 response rate. So let's speak to that briefly. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, first of all, Michigan can't beat us in anything. So I mean, let's just get that straight. We're not going to lose to that state up north. It's just, that's not even a possibility. But like the rest of Buckeye Nation, I want to crush them. I want to beat them by 30. It's not good when the Buckeyes face the Wolverines and we win by 10 points or 4. It just doesn't feel as good, right, Mary? It feels it feels like a loss almost. That's too close. I want the game to be 50-0. I don't. Some people say, "Oh, I like a tight." I don't want a tight game. I want the game to be a blowout. I want my team. I want it to be over in the first or second quarter. And so that's the challenge. That it's not about. We don't want to be close to Michigan. We want to blow them out. And in fact, we want to let them know that we can beat y'all in everything. We beat y'all in football, basketball, hockey, track, and yes, census count. We can beat you in a census count.
Well, let me just be this direct.
There you go.
You see that? You see that? So I'm putting it right out here that we are going to whoop the state of Michigan in participation. And I'm going to send this facial covering. I'll wash it first. I'll make sure it's clean. I'll get it all sanitized, but I'm sending this to the mayor of Ann Arbor.
Shots fired.
I'm putting it all on the line.
Yeah, shots fired. We have, don't you even speak them terms about losing to Michigan. We can't even say that,
Listen, there are some key dates that we have to make sure we pay attention to. They have until August the 14th to get your census in. We've all taken it on this call, and so we're now challenging you to make sure that you take it as well. You've already received the information about the census in your mailboxes. You can take it now, either online, or you can call the number and take the census in 13 different languages. So if you want to go online to 2020census.gov, or you can call 844-330-2020. Now, any closing comments that you two guys want to make concerning this?
Commissioner?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Let me just say to everyone watching, thank you for what you do. Thank you for what you represent. And most importantly, thank you for being a part of this family that we call Central Ohio. The census, I can't think of a more important thing that you can do as a resident of Central Ohio to support, uplift, and continue to allow Central Ohio to be the best place in America to live, work, and raise a family. And it starts with you, it ends with us. But this census is very much a part of that process to do that for you and your family. God bless you. Thank you so much. And I hope that you will do your part and take that 10-minute, less than 10 question survey and make sure that your voice is counted and be a part of the 2020 census.
I just add, thank you, Commissioner, for all your leadership and commitment to this partnership and this important initiative. We would not be where we are today without the county commissioners and their leadership and vision for this. I just want to reinforce something that Commissioner Boyce raised earlier in the call, and that is how safe and secure it is to participate. The census will never ask for your social security number, your bank or credit card accounts, money or donations, or anything on behalf of a political party. The Census Bureau has a robust cybersecurity program that keeps your responses safe and confidential. So know that this is something that is safe and secure to participate in. We can't say that enough because we know that some folks have questions, and particularly about some of the language and the movements that are going on around this country and in some places around the world, that they can safely participate in this and protect themselves and their family. But it is so critical to have their voice and make sure that they get counted.
Highly important. Listen, that wraps it up for today. Mayor Ginther, Commissioner Boyce, thanks for your time and for helping Central Ohio understand why taking the 2020 census matters and why it's important. I want you all to remember to take the 2020 census. Do it today. Do it now. Go to 2020census.gov for more information and take the census. Or you can call 844-330-2020. Again, that's 844-330-2020. Thank you all and have a great week. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Good to see you.
Good to see you guys.